Hey guys, just off to the shops. Hey, turn off, it's Tim Tufuga here. Just go for a drive, eh? That's Sunday, what is it, the 29th of June 2025. I'm just heading out of the house and driving over. Checking out this some replies I've been getting on the internet after my last post on the Australian Defence Force national security posture for the 2025 and the foreseeable future. I was talking about Australian as an Australian and how I perceived our national security projections. As it turns out, I had some replies from what obviously seems to be a white Australian who does not think that I'm an Australian, and subsequently said that you shouldn't be talking about the Australian Defence Force national security because for starters I'm not white, so it's one of those again, eh? I think that the Australian national security is Anglo-Saxons. You got to be a white Australian to be an Australian, and not a Samoan Australian. So I'd like to remind people that the person who said that my national security point of view does not reflect the white Australian national security point of view, which is quite accurate. Because in a assimilationist Pauline Hanson One Nation standpoint, that if you're an Australian you have to assimilate to the Australian culture, which is meant to be white Anglo-Saxon. So to be Australian you've got to be white. So I disagree wholeheartedly. I've lived in Australia for 44 years from New Zealand. Migrated here when I was 13, and I went to Brisbane State High School and went to the University of Queensland, graduated here, brought up here in Australia, lived most of my life here. I actually worked in 1982, at the age of 14, I worked for the Cadoo's restaurant in George Street in Brisbane City as a kid, underaged, and I've always lived here for most of my life. I've seen Brisbane grow from a city of barely 1.2 million to now to over 3.5 million. Now I've lived here all my life. I've travelled overseas. I've lived with my father in Samoa for a period of time. My father is a CPA accountant, a Canterbury University scholar. He went to St. Bede's College in Christchurch back in the 60s when Samoa recently became independent. I'll continue this after I do my shopping, eh? So where was I? Alright, okay, just done my shopping. So, my old man, he's passed away in 2015, and he is buried in his village in Samoa called Salailua, which is a village in Samoa, in the big island of Savaii. My father passed away. He's an accountant. He was an auditor for the Samoan government. So he's a Samoan, he served his country. In the meantime, I lived in Australia with my mother. My mother passed away in 2002 from cervical cancer, undiagnosed might I add, which was suspiciously seemed as though the medical authorities had euthanized my mother after having a cerebrospinal tap on her spine in 2002 that subsequently led to her hastened death, which I complained to the Queensland medical authorities at the time, and it was ignored by the Australian medical authorities because it was only myself talking, complaining, but that was it. That's a different matter anyway. So in the meantime, I'm talking about the Australian national security and talking about Australian attitudes towards the neighbourhood. As a Samoan, we don't have a military, and so we don't have a national security strategy, as it were. As Samoans, we have a population of 200,000 people. We don't have any military force in Samoa. We only have rugby league players and MMA fighters and kickboxers and boxers, and we do kick your ass in boxing here in Australia as Australia's heavyweight boxing champions, and we have a lot of very good fighters, but we don't have a military branch. That's one thing you got to realize. So we, as Samoans, well, we have to find places to distribute our population, and of course we come to Australia. So our national security is Australia. So we have Samoans serving in various international armies, armed forces. The most prominent presence of Samoans serve in the US military. So there's thousands of Samoans who served in the US military, including my wife. And the largest Samoan population is not actually in Samoa. It's actually in the United States. So most Samoans live in the United States of America. In the meantime, some prick here in Australia says to me, you don't have a national security because you're not a white Australian. Well, mate, I've got to remind you, I'm Australian. And as an Australian, I find your racism very offensive. And I've written extensively on Australian racism for years. And that includes Pauline Hanson and the ultra-right-wing cabal, the League of Rights, the Hammerskins, and all the bikie gangs here and their racist attitudes. The white bikie gangs, they're quite prominent, and I've encountered a lot of racism from Australia throughout my lifetime living here, and encountering a lot of racism amongst the Queensland Police for a number of years. But of course there are a lot of Samoans involved in that internalized racism that exists quite prominently as well. In the meantime, I've digressed from the point of what I was meaning to talk about, which is the Australian national security and our military procurements, and our procurements, as it were, of our military weaponry. I would like to focus more on our recent naval procurement and commissioning of the HMAS Arafura. The HMAS Arafura was commissioned yesterday on May the 28th, 2025. And subsequently, I noticed that the naval seamen that were standing proudly on this newly commissioned Australian warship, they were proudly white Anglo-Saxon dominated naval officers and seamen. Now, as a Samoan and as a predominant representative of the Oceania indigenous peoples, we have mostly this region in the Pacific Oceania is predominantly Polynesian, Melanesian, and Micronesian indigenous people. We're brown skin and we're black. So that's most of the people. Now, when the Australian naval ships go to other ports in the region, they encounter Malaysians, Singaporeans, Indonesians, Filipinos, and Koreans, and all these Asian people, and brown skin and black skin people. Now, the people that stand out like a sore thumb are the New Zealanders and the Australians, who are predominantly Anglo-Saxons and Europeans. Now, they don't belong in the group. Now, when we have the Pacific Forum, you have one white guy or one white woman or one or two of them being Australia or New Zealand represented in the Pacific Forum. Now, watching the HMAS Arafura being commissioned and then just seeing white people who are more comfortable being in NATO or in Europe, in the European Union, they don't belong in our region. And the mere fact that a white man comments on my YouTube saying, mate, you shouldn't be talking about national security issues. And I'm saying, mate, I'm in the South Pacific. I'm more Australian and more Indigenous, along with the Aborigines and the Torres Strait Islanders. I am more Indigenous to this region than you will ever be, forever. And that's a fact. Now, so I noticed that the Australians Navy, the Royal Australian Navy, had commissioned the Arafura yesterday. I watched the whole ceremony live streamed on YouTube. In the meantime, on another YouTube channel, a Chinese government channel, they announced the commissioning in 2025 of 18 new warships. Now, these 18 warships include, I've got to get the numbers because I haven't got it with me here. I'll go back and talk about it later. But these new ships include, up to 7 brand new frigates, the Type 054A frigates. 5 of them will be commissioned this year, and 2 Type 0554B frigates. 2 of them, they're the latest frigates, armed with YJ-21 hypersonic missiles. Now that doesn't include the Type 52D destroyers that will be commissioned this year. Now, the Chinese have They've launched 37 Type 52D destroyers. 37. This year, they're going to commission an additional 2 Type 52D destroyers, making it 31 commissioned Type 52D destroyers. Now, in addition to the Type 52D destroyers, the Chinese will commission their 9th Type 055 destroyer, the most advanced warship, the most heavily weapons-loaded warship on the planet, with the most advanced electronic warfare capabilities, radar systems, the Golden Eye radar systems, more superior than anything that America has, let alone Australia. Now, the Type 55 platform destroyer is completely invincible. Now, China has launched 12 Type 055, but will commission by the end of this year their ninth. So in 2026, China will commission 12 new Type 055 destroyers. They've already been launched. They haven't been commissioned. They're going through their outfitting and sea trials presently. Then there is 2 Type 93B SSN nuclear submarines, fully laden with torpedoes and hypersonic missile systems. They can take on a Virginia-class SSN easily, let alone the Ohio SSBNs. Now, and also the SSGN Virginia class, the Ohio class SSBGNs, which are cruise missile adapted Ohio class submarines. The other 3 ships that I haven't mentioned that will be commissioned in 2025 is the the replenishment ship, the Type 903 replenishment ship, which is the 3rd one, and that is for fuel replenishment at sea for the Chinese Navy. And the 4th Type 075 LHD light helicopter dock will be commissioned in later this year, in December 14th, I believe, and or thereabouts. The Type 003 Fujian aircraft carrier will also be commissioned by the end of this year as well. Actually, in the next few days or few weeks. At most. So that amounts to about 18 new Chinese warships for a total tonnage amount of 300,000 tons, which is equal to the total amount of the French Navy and a lot of other navies' tonnage for the entire Navy. China's Navy is 3 million tonnage of warships, which is the largest tonnage of warships on the planet, way more than the Americans. So 3 million tonnage, and 300,000 of that is going to be commissioned this year. Now, when Australia is bragging about the Arafura being launched, in the meantime, China had just launched it will be commissioning 18 brand new warships this year, which is a lot of tonnage of warships and a lot of kick your ass here in Australia. Now, when you talk about Australian national security, and we make the comparisons of military might and superpower capabilities, well, Australia, mate, and your racist attitudes towards me, and I get that all the time. I get insulted by my fellow Australians and even the sycophantic Samoans. Now, frankly, I'm still fighting you. I'm still arguing and fighting white Australia. It's still the same. I've lived here for 44 years, and it's like I've just got off the plane. I've just got off the boat, and I'm still fighting you. I'm still fighting racism in this country, and also the racism amongst my own people. Now, I don't care. I've lived here for so long. My purview is national security. I've studied it for over 30 years, and I've written about it for 30 years. I did my I was doing my Masters in Policing, Intelligence and Counter-Terrorism at Macquarie University at North Ryde in Sydney. And I had to encounter a lot of racism amongst the academics down there. So I left. But I continue writing my blogs. I always include my blogs. I always talk about it. Mate, I don't write books anymore or any articles, extensive articles anymore, because I'm sick of these, I'm sick of having to qualify myself every time. But I still write about things, and I talk about racism in this country, and the outcry by a lot of people. Frankly, I don't care, mate. I really don't give a hoot about who you are and why you give me a lot of shit. But I'll still talk about it, all right? And I always make my comparisons, and I love comparing Australia to China, mate. You think that you've got problems with China, mate? You just have a look at Indonesia now. Indonesia's just joined BRICS. Now, when Indonesia joins BRICS, that's a Muslim country. That's over 200,000 Muslims just north of the Arafura Sea and the Timor Sea, just a few kilometres north of it. And you're worried about a Samoan, myself, and a country, a Samoan Polynesian country with a population of 200,000, and yet you won't even take on the Indonesians. Mate, you're too scared to take on the Kopasses. Kopasses will kick your ass. The attitudes of people here in this country, their racist attitudes and the Eurocentrism is phenomenal. AUKUS itself, by definition of its membership, is racist. It's white Australia trying to hold onto the apron strings with England and white America. I mean, that in itself is post-British Anglo-American colonialism. I mean, if you got shit for brains, you haven't figured that one out. It takes a long time to figure it out, but eventually it finally will sink in. In the meantime, the Chinese are getting stronger and stronger, and they've just given us in Samoa, a lot of heavy machinery for the agro-produce sector. Now, the Chinese built all of the Samoan sporting events, sporting complexes, and they've given Samoa so many donations through China Aid. Now, just this year alone, the Chinese have given Samoans a lot of heavy machinery, tractors, and a lot of hydraulic machinery for the farming sector. Now that is the Chinese. That is the Chinese benevolence, their Marshall Plan to help with the Belt and Road initiatives for the Samoans. Now, I know New Zealand and Australia's helped Samoa for decades. New Zealand had no choice. They invaded Samoa in 1914, so they have to help the Samoans. I mean, it was their post-colonial guilt that they invaded the Samoans and invaded my ancestral homeland, which is Apia, because I'm a descendant of the Saturi Tufuga. We are the descendants of the Boesi, Maota Boesi, or Malietoa Talavu's family, where I'm a direct descendant of Malietoa Talavu in Apia, with the Boesi people of Apia, the Saturi Tufuga family. That's my mother's father's family. Even though we were born in Christchurch. I was born in Christchurch in New Zealand and brought up here in Brisbane. But mate, even here I'm always dealing with so much xenophobia. Even amongst the Aborigines, they're xenophobic towards me anyway. But mate, I just tolerate it. I'm in my own little under the rock lifestyle. But I'm pretty happy with what I'm doing and giving you a bit of a serve. But that's just the way it is, mate. But I'm still here. Right, in the meantime, I've just done my shopping, mate. I'm heading back into the house. But It's been a another day in Brisbane, and you just have to tolerate. So, just heading off back into the house. I think I've had enough of still having a yarn, doing my YouTube. So,
thanks, Tim.
is that okay, sis?
Got to ask the paper towels.
Ah, not too late.
Thanks, Tim.
So, we have to roll with the punches and continue with another day in Brisbane, Australia. So